Hey guys, episode 5. Today I'd like to talk about a question Etho had asked in one of his most recent videos. He wanted to know how long other dimensional, or I should just say any dimensions, chunks load, or stay loaded, I should say, when an entity passes through a portal as opposed to a player. The reason he proposed this question is because he has a mob system in his single-player world that drops the loot into a path of water that drops the loot into his end portal. So whenever he goes to the end, there's a ton of gunpowder and whatnot on the ground, and as soon as he enters the end, he collects it all. So he wanted to know how long the chunks actually stay loaded, so he would know basically whether or not it's an issue if he was to be AFK long enough, if it would actually start despawning the items. Well, I would say yes, that is the case, but not in the way you might think. As Etho, I'm sure, already knows from the fact that he put water in his single player world and had it go onto the Obsidian platform, and then, in fact, since I put the source here, I'll just do it myself. The water gets cut, and it doesn't update, even if the water that stays behind is flowing instead of a source block of water. It stays there. So that right there, honestly, is the answer to your question on how long they stay loaded. I would argue less than a tick, because I set up a similar situation in a single player world on creative mode where I I set up a similar situation in creative mode where I broke a portion of the Obsidian platform, knowing that it was going to be reset, and I attached a redstone torch to the side of the existing platform that powered just a floor of redstone. And then on top of the block that the redstone torch was placed on the side of, I put a lever. And when I flipped the lever, it turned off the torch, as you might expect, by inverting it. And then when the torch was inverted, it, obviously, like I said, it turned off the redstone floor. Redstone wiring I had placed everywhere is what I mean by redstone floor. My idea was that when, if you were to send an item through here, like this, when the other side would load and it would reset that Obsidian platform, as it did here, all that water is gone, all that's left is the source block. So let's say that the redstone torch was placed right here, and the lever was placed right here, okay? So the torch is off because the lever is on. So then when it resets, similarly like to what happened here, where, by the way, to illustrate, oh, that's interesting. I did not even press anything, and that got updated somehow. That's really interesting. I don't think it changes my argument at all, but as you can see, that, which should have probably required an update, that water stayed there. Now, the exact same thing happened with my redstone torch that would be right here. In fact, I'm just going to put a regular torch there to sort of illustrate it. Pretend that's a redstone torch. By the way, particles are off due to the 1.4.4 bug, where they basically flicker everywhere. So, redstone torch, lever. Okay, lever turned on, redstone torch turns off, and when this would get reset, the lever that was here is gone, obviously. Similarly to the water, like I was saying, which should turn the redstone torch back on. But like I said, I would argue that if these are loaded, it's less than a tick. So it doesn't have time to update. Because even when I come through the portal, as you saw, this water was left as just source block. And similarly, the torch, even if I was to go through the portal and not just send an item through it, similar thing happened. Just because that got reset, you know, the Obsidian platform got reset, it didn't actually update the blocks, and you know, that was my theory, was that it was less than a tick, but you know, due to special circumstances, this being significantly different than another portal, due to the fact that it has this resetting spawn point, basically, I performed a similar test in the nether, just to be safe, you know. Also because when you send items, particularly arrows, through nether portals, they keep their trajectory, and since that went into a wall, it might actually just fall down, so I'll go check. Yeah, it hit me. Anyway, but it keeps the trajectory, so if you send something through here, it ends up on the other side at the same trajectory and velocity that it's moving when it goes into the portal. Anyway, so I performed the same test in the nether, but with slightly different circumstances, due to the fact that I didn't have to worry about the the resetting Obsidian platform in the nether. I basically set up a really simple test where it's like, here's your nether portal, and then I put pressure plates. Whoa, did not mean to do that. I put pressure plates here and here, so that when an item would land on them, when it was thrown through the portal, it would power, again, just redstone all over the ground. And I had used MC Edit in my test to make the ground sandstone, so that I could easily see the redstone, even though, you know, I was using MC Edit's analyze command and just the visual cue to know that whether or not the redstone was active or not. And the first thing I did is I stood on the pressure plate, I quit the game, I opened an MC Edit, and I checked to make sure that there was a visual difference and a data difference in the analysis on whether or not it was considered lit or off. And there was right away I saw a visual difference. You know, the ones that were lit were red, and the ones that were off were black. So there was really no need to use the analysis option when I could clearly see it. Anyway, so one thing I ran into right away, which is really interesting, as you know, this is a half slab, but it sort of occupies, you know, it occupies what would be an air block, let's say. Pressure plates are the same way. Just because their hitbox is a lot smaller, the game still kind of records them as taking up a full block's worth of space. So when you have your graphics set up, and I don't know if it's specific to your graphics setup in MC Edit, it might be how it always displays it. When you look at a pressure plate, rather than show a pressure plate like you see it in Minecraft, it shows what looks like wood planks, oak wood planks to be exact, and it just basically shows it as a full block. When I was throwing items through the nether portal and then checking with MC Edit, and obviously I'm checking with MC Edit because I'm not technically loading the chunks in Minecraft in order to see what's happening on the other side. Whenever I would throw, like I tested it first, I'd throw items through, and then I'd look at MC Edit and they would be where the pressure plates would be. Then when I put the pressure plates there, whenever I'd throw items, even though I was throwing them through the same direction, you know, in that particular case I was going south, which would be, you know, this way. So I was throwing them from the north to the south, and then I would check an MC Edit, and instead of being on that side where the pressure plates would be, they were collecting here. And I believe that's because it was treating the pressure plates as full blocks, which was very easy to notice in MC Edit because it was displaying them as full blocks. And it was basically hitting it and then knocking it back this way. So that whenever I check an MC Edit, the items, rather than be on the pressure plates, were on this side. So obviously an easy fix for that. What I ended up doing was I took everything with MC Edit and I just rose the portal up so that it was one block higher, and I started throwing items in, and I continued to check, and sure enough, even when items were sitting directly on the pressure plate, and if I were to check and see them in MC Edit and then go in myself but not actually step on the pressure plate, just kind of wait on the obsidian, I could see that the pressure plates were being activated. However, in MC Edit, when I would load the chunks merely to see what was happening, they were not activating the pressure plate. Again, this goes back to the idea that the time spent in the other dimension loading the chunks is less than a single tick. Like I said, I think that when I use MC Edit, I'm technically loading those chunks temporarily to look at them. Obviously, it's not using the game engine to do it, or who knows? It might actually be using a form of the game engine to do it. I'm not really sure. But when I load those chunks with MC Edit, it could be that it's performing the same sort of operation it would in the game when I load the chunks. So those items, like I said, my theory is that they stay in a data format in the chunk you're in the dimension you're throwing items through, until that other side is loaded. So a way to test this, which I'm not going to spend 5 minutes of my video doing, would be to throw an item through and then sit over here and wait 5.5 minutes so you're absolutely sure, and knowing of course nobody else is on the server, or even a single player world if that's what you wanted to do, and then go through and see if the item is there. And that would be proof that the item had despawned, even though you were in a completely different dimension and the other dimension's chunks should not have loaded at all. So basically that's my hypothesis. Like I said, it sort of proposes more questions than it answers. To be blunt, I would just say that Etho, your way of collecting materials is probably not as efficient as it could be. I mean, technically, you're still getting a lot because for every 5-minute interval, you are still getting a bunch. And like I said, I don't know whether or not passing through portals maintains the timer that is created. Oh my goodness, you're not going to stack. The timer that happens when items stack on the ground. But you might not be getting the best rates. Again, they're still probably better than just sitting and waiting at your base, going AFK. So it's not like your system is flawed in any way, but due to the way the game seems to work, it seems like it might not be as efficient as it could be, at no fault to you. Anyway, I'm going to call it an end there. I think I covered pretty much everything I had intended to. So if you have any questions or comments, please let me know. Leave a comment on this video or whatever, and I'd love to try some more tests and answer some questions if I can. Anyway, thanks for watching, you guys. I appreciate it. Take it easy. Have a great day. Earlier in this video, I had mentioned that I wasn't going to spend 5.5 minutes waiting around to test the theory I had. But honestly, Etho, I value your time more than my own, and I'd hate to make you have to spend your time you could be producing great videos. So I decided I'd spend some time testing the theory. I have been doing this, shooting arrows into this portal, for over 20 minutes. At first, okay, this is a single player creative mode world I just started, I went into the creative inventory, I grabbed obsidian, and I grabbed flint and steel, I made a portal, and then I tossed the obsidian and flint and steel in the portal. Then I created a bow. Actually, I tossed it in the portal, and then I jumped through the portal to absolutely positively load the nether chunks, because it had to create the portal and whatnot. So I threw the stuff through the portal and then went in and got it to make sure. And then I waited, I'd say 12 minutes. I know it was at least more than 5, because I was watching another video while I was AFK. And I definitely had the screen on and not paused. So I hopped through the portal after 12 or so minutes, and I did in fact pick up 1 obsidian, obviously in creative mode, you know. So when I threw the obsidian, all I ever had was 1, and 1 flint and steel, and that honestly was interesting to me, because that does in fact prove that Etho, your system of collecting the loot in cross-dimensionally is actually very effective. So I spent the next 20 minutes after that shooting arrows into this guy, so that I could test a little bit further your idea of, if it is loading the chunks temporarily, do those chunks in fact stay loaded long enough that doing this could potentially cause things to despawn? Well, since the only items I had sent through the portal were flint and steel and obsidian, once I go through here, I'm pretty much guaranteed, you know, I'm going to get almost the full inventory of arrows, I'd imagine, for how long I've been doing this. And then if I also obtain 1 flint and steel and 1 obsidian, it'll prove that I did in fact, well, I guess all it really will prove is that after 20 minutes of constantly sending arrows through here, 20 minutes wasn't long enough to alter the time to cause those other items to despawn. And what I'm going to do, just to be safe, I'm going to take, do these stack? No, they don't. Okay, so I guess it won't help me to take flint and steel, but I'm going to take 1 obsidian with me, so that if, for instance, if there's 1 on the other side and I pick it up, it's going to change that to say 2, because I'm a little bit afraid, and I don't think that there's enough arrows on the other side to fill up this whole thing, but there very well could be. But I would hate to pick it up in creative mode and have it not give me that extra obsidian due to the fact that my inventory filled up with arrows instead, because at the speed and trajectory I've been shooting them, I expect to be hit by all of them as soon as I go through. So I definitely want to stay in creative mode so it doesn't kill me. So let's go check it out. Look at that. Whoa, wow. Okay. Oh, wow. You know what? I'm actually very surprised. I was under the impression that arrows picked up in creative mode. And I should definitely have checked that beforehand. Let's see. Okay, cool. Well, that's interesting. I don't think I have to really say much about that. 20 minutes straight of shooting arrows through there. I would have loved to have seen how many I had actually collected, but I think it was pretty clear. The game lagged pretty severely for a minute, and you could see a really large cluster of them in a line from where I had sent them. So I guess that is a way to answer your question, I suppose. I mean, oh, look at that. That's just now loading because, like I said, this is a brand new world. Anyway, that answers your question, I guess. Or rather, it doesn't answer your question on how long it stays loaded. Given this evidence, my hypothesis is that they don't actually load until you go through, at least with items. I still have a feeling that entities behave a little bit differently due to my experience with zombie pigmen. But yeah, I would say that in this case, it proves that your system is pretty flawless, and you're not really, I mean, perhaps if you waited AFK for several days, it would make a difference. But honestly, you would most definitely crash your game if you were to have that many items show up, as you saw with how many arrows I just had. So I know this doesn't really answer your question on the exact time, but I hope this is giving you enough reason to believe that your system is going to work pretty efficiently, and you've honestly got nothing to worry about. Anyway, thanks for watching. Have a great day. See ya.